can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie the Blur Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, so we're back for another round of, as you might have guessed it, the best comics this week. Let's go ahead and start off with Storm number 7. Since there's already going to be a video coming out for this, I don't really want to spend a whole heap of a lot of time on this particular title. This entire issue, one of the things that I think really kind of, stuck out to me is that Storm is up against something that I feel is brand new to her in this particular aspect. Storm has gone up against her fair share of gods and godlike beings. In this particular issue, she's not going up against just one god. She's going up against a gang of gods. Gods ranging everywhere from Amerigan to Sasanu, and even by the time you get to the end of this issue, maybe even possibly Thor himself. Now, I don't really want to go too far into that, and I don't really want to make it seem as though maybe Thor is against her in this, but obviously Thor knows something about what's going on and believes that Storm needs to tackle this in a different way. We also get to see a little bit more of Maggot, though I will say I was a little disappointed we didn't see really more of what it is he can do. I feel like that's something that's being held a little closer to the chest. Maybe it'll take another couple of issues for us to really see what Maggot is capable of now that he is an Omega level mutant. And we also get some nice little back and forth between Storm and Iron Man in this issue, which I thought was pretty cool. Next up is going to be G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, Jinx, number 1. This is a silent mission, and something that they technically used to do in the past with some G.I. Joe issues, but this one is kind of just really playing into that, where we're following Jinx on a mission infiltrating a Cobra base. There's no dialogue. That's really all there is to it. There's no dialogue, and it's just Jinx doing her thing. Being a ninja, I dig it. I love it. I absolutely love this issue. I'm not gonna spend a whole heap of a lot of time just breaking this whole thing down, because, I mean, honestly, there's really not a lot to say. There's nothing said in this issue whatsoever. The most dialogue you actually get is from the letter section of the comic, and it makes sense for what this is. Why would Jinx be talking during this, and why would anyone really have anything to say? This is just straight up meat and potatoes. And it's really just an opportunity to just pay attention to Danny's art, who also is operating as not just artist, but co-writer on this with Dan Waters. And once again, there's nothing to write, so I mean, there you go. I mean, it's really just kind of laying everything out. But I just thought it was really cool just to see this in all of its glory. It's a really fun issue, and honestly, if you are a G.I. Joe fan of any level, you're gonna enjoy this. Now, I will also point out, this has nothing to do with the Energon Universe G.I. Joe series. This is 110 million% the G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero timeline of things, the same comic that's been running since the 80s. So yeah, don't go into this expecting to see blinks and nods towards Transformers or Void Rivals or anything of that magnitude. But don't worry, we'll be talking about big robots here in a moment. Now let's get into our fuck shit of the week. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, this week's fuck shit of the week is less harmful to the industry. It's not anything I think that is like, oh my god, it's so awful. It's just something I think is kind of funny. I saw that there was a solicit for a One World Under Doom tie-in book, and guess what it was? Gods.
We do not care.
Now, some of you are probably familiar with the fact that I don't particularly care for that book. I tried, it just didn't pan out. As I say to people all the time, I love a lot of Jonathan Hickman's work. I'm a huge fan of his X-Men stuff, a huge fan of his Fantastic Four stuff, huge fan of East of West and the Black Monday murders, but I would be a liar if I told you I liked everything that Jonathan Hickman did, and I'm sorry, but I don't. Gods was one of them. Decorum is another. I don't really like Decorum either. I don't expect many people to know what that book is. It was a book that he did at Image, actually while he was working on X-Men shit. Point of the matter is, I always felt that Gods was like the work meeting that could have been an email, or the comic that could have just as easily had been about characters who already existed in the Marvel Comics continuity, as opposed to giving us characters who were literally just, pastiches of characters that already exist in Marvel continuity, or just pastiches of other characters from elsewhere. Like, but I get why there were new characters created for it. I don't need anyone to explain that to me. It still doesn't change how I feel about it. But I feel like Marvel is still trying to make gods a thing in the Marvel Comics universe, and I find that hilarious. It reminds me of when Marvel kept trying to make the Inhumans a thing. I know that, people like Rob from, Comic Explain and various other, like, YouTubers who are infinitely bigger than myself, I know that all of them love to glaze up gods. Bully to them for that. I'm not gonna do it. I'm sorry. I'm just not gonna do it. It is not good. It is not good. I'm sorry. And you can't convince me otherwise. And tying this bullshit into One World Under Doom is really not gonna make me like it anymore. Now, this time around, Jonathan Hickman is not writing. It's actually gonna be Ryan North. So maybe this might turn out to be good. I don't know. I like Ryan North as a writer. I think in terms of stat sheet and win-loss record when it comes to every new comic book day, I feel like Ryan North has a pretty solid win-loss ratio. I think that Ryan North is probably one of the better writers out there right now for the big two. While I've enjoyed his Fantastic Four, I'm enjoying his One World Under Doom. I even enjoyed his Secret Invasion, which nobody talked about, myself included, unless it was like in videos like this when I used to do them for Patreon. I don't know why Marvel's still trying to do this. Why are we so, like, did God sell that good? I mean, I'm asking seriously for a friend. Like, I don't know why we're still doing it. At this point, Gods is Marvel's version of Fetch.
Stop trying to make Fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
Stop trying to make Gods a thing. It ain't gonna happen, okay? Stop. Anyway, that's fuck shit of the week. So now let's get back to our business as usual, and this time we're going to be talking about Amazing Spider-Man #1. This is a brand new relaunch. We are kicking everything off. He is no longer the Spider-Knot. He's no longer going through the 8 deaths of Spider-Man. He is no longer under the penmanship of Zeb Wells or anything of that magnitude, which, I mean, to be fair, really hasn't been for, some months. But point is, this is a brand new kickoff for the webhead, and I'm not gonna lie, so far, I think this is kind of back to the type of Spider-Man I like. I don't want to speak too soon, but this feels like Spider-Man getting back down to brass tacks the way I prefer. This is Spider-Man staying on his street level game. He's not trying to fight otherworldly creatures. He's not trying to go up against cosmic space gods or demons or supernatural monsters or aliens from a faraway galaxy or anything like that. This is Spider-Man back down to fighting the villains that we are probably more accustomed to him dealing with. And while it's not to say he hasn't exactly, been doing that for the most part, it does always feel like Spider-Man's getting roped off into some other bullshit, even in his main core title. And I'll definitely say for me, what I liked about this is that while it did kind of smack of the Dan Slott Brand New Day kickoff from, many moons ago, it also at the same time did so without really disrupting Spider-Man's status quo. Like, I think it's got the same energy as Brand New Day, which, to be fair, I know Brand New Day and Dan Slott are like dirty words to some Spider-Man fans. I actually think Dan Slott's Spider-Man run is goated. I loved Brand New Day. However, I feel like while this is definitely borrowing some Brand New Day isms, it's also doing it in such a way where it doesn't have the weight of a massive status quo shift hanging over it. If you're expecting Spider-Man to be back with Mary Jane, no, you're not getting that. Matter of fact, Mary Jane's not even in this issue. His new love interest, Shay, she is still hanging around, so she hasn't been written off into the sunset or anything of that magnitude. I don't know how much more we're going to learn about her. He's still hanging out with Aunt May. He's still having difficulty finding a job until he doesn't. He starts working for Rand, which for those that don't know, that's Iron Fist company. And he also ends up discovering that there's a villain out there, somewhere. He doesn't know who it is or where they're coming from, but he knows there's a villain out there who's going after some of his villains. And I actually appreciated in this that Kelly was able to really kind of hone in on the fact that everything that the Rhino is doing in this issue is out of character. That's something we don't really get a lot of sometimes, when we see a character who's normally been acting one way and suddenly that character's acting different somewhere else. And usually it's just always like, I don't know, just comic books doing comic book shit. But no, in this, I actually appreciate it. It was very much pointed out that yes, this is out of character for Rhino, and not trying to diminish the character growth that Rhino had been receiving over the past few years. Getting away from that, we don't once again know the full scope of what's going on. We do technically know who the villain is. It is a hobgoblin, but the real question is which one. And honestly, I think even saying that much isn't much of a spoiler, because there is somebody else who that hobgoblin is working with. We do not know who they are, and this is already out in the weeds. This isn't like, a breaking news or anything, but Sinister 16 is something that's already been hinted at and solicited, put out there for the world to consume. So we know that there's going to be a massive uprising of villains that are all Spider-Man villains, and they're going to be coming after him in one way, shape, form, or fashion. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see how it plays out. But I am curious to see how Norman Osborn is going to factor in this. We actually had a couple of little side stories. I won't talk about the last one, because I think that one is one you should be surprised by. But the one with Norman Osborn I like a whole lot, because it really focuses on whether or not Norman Osborn's going to try to pick himself back up in the wake of the Zeb Wells run of Amazing Spider-Man, him reverting back to being the Green Goblin after trying so hard to be a good person. Is he going to double down on being the Green Goblin again, or is he actually going to seek atonement? And I like the messaging that's there behind it. Next up is going to be Transformers number 19. Man, Daniel Warren Johnson was cooking with this issue. We saw in the previous issue, Megatron had just made his triumphant return. I probably will do a dedicated video to this one, so I won't go too terribly deep into it, but I mean, just know Megatron has largely been MIA from Daniel Warren Johnson's Transformers run. He's popped up like a grand total of like maybe 3 times. And one of those wasn't even in a Transformers issue specifically. It was in an Energon one-shot special. But yeah, for the most part, we've only seen him in like flashbacks, things of that nature. We haven't really seen him in present day very much. We've seen his gun arm more than we've seen him. And that's only because Optimus Prime has been using it. This issue is all about Megatron, all about him. I mean, like from the bottom to the top. This issue basically chronicles the ascension of Megatron from being just a bog standard warrior and leader to how he ultimately becomes Optimus Prime's equal and opposite number. This issue also chronicles why Megatron's most classic alternate form, his gun mode, why that mode, something that I think people often used to make fun of about Megatron back in the day. Even when I was a kid and as I got older, I used to see this a lot, where people would be like, oh, man, his alternate mode, he has to turn into something that someone else has to use. Well, this issue proves why that gun mode is his most powerful mode and why you need to respect it. All right, so we're bringing back the indie corner this week, and I am actually really honored because, for the most part, when I talk about comics on the indie corner, these are people who I don't really know. And while I'm not gonna profess to know the person behind this comic on any significant level, it is someone who I consider one of my contemporaries, one of my peers, a friend of the channel. Friend of the channel, Tashi J, is the one who is behind this comic, The Gray, and it's a really awesome comic about a character by the name of Shamika Day, who's an experimental physicist and a Dallas, Texas native who loves science and the mysteries of space and the universe, and now she must harness her inventions, these miniature particle accelerators that are built into her gloves, to save the world by becoming the hero known as the Gray. And if you're the least bit familiar with Midnight Comics, you probably already know about some of their other titles, but just in case you don't, I'll try and leave a link below to that as well. Midnight Comics has a lot of really cool comics that are, very black focused on telling black stories, black narratives by black people, and I really appreciate what they do. If you've been floating around the internet to any degree, you've probably seen stories like Soul and Admani, stuff like that. That's all Midnight Comics, so yeah, I highly recommend go check that out. Go back the gray on Kickstarter. You actually can get issues 1, 2, and 3 on the Kickstarter, as well as a bunch of other really cool stuff. I think it's very well on its way to hitting its goal, but I mean, hey, the real fight doesn't really start until you hit the goal, and then everything else is just all the other icing on the cake stuff and lots of really other cool things that they can make happen. The further and more money this Kickstarter raises. So I do highly recommend, if anything I've said has struck a chord, go hit the links in the description and or pinned comment below. All right, now let's get to our final entry, and that is going to be Absolute Batman number 7. This is going to be a tale of two, I guess, reviews, because when I first read this issue, until I got to the very end of it, I had one particular way of thinking about it. Got to the end, that entire way of thinking about it completely changed. And it was not from I guess technically from a narrative perspective, but also from an artistic perspective. For those who may or may not know, I am an artist myself. I don't proclaim to be on the level of other people, but I have opinions about art and the way that it is used. In this particular issue, let's go ahead and get some of the really cool stuff out of the way that I really enjoyed. And that was the Absolute Universe has introduced its own version of Matches Malone, a persona that Bruce Wayne and main continuity and the animated series of Batman would often use to investigate stuff on the street level. In this particular universe, that's not what this is. Matches Malone is an actual person, a part of the friend group that Bruce in this universe has cultivated, where we know that in this universe, Bruce grew up being friends with characters like Killer Croc, the Penguin, the Riddler, Two-Face, and Catwoman. They were all childhood friends, and Matches Malone was also a part of that group. But he was always in and out of prison, and we find out in this issue that something very terrible has happened to him. And this isn't really a spoiler because it's literally one of the first things you see. But in this issue, Matches Malone is revealed to be dead, and we don't know why. We find out later the how and the why, but I'll leave that for you to figure out when you read the book. The thing that I thought was really cool about this and what really kind of set this all home for me is how this was all presented, because this is also an issue that is introducing us to the Absolute Universe's version of Mr. Freeze. Although this is not the Mr. Freeze that you are familiar with. This is gonna be a very, 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 very different version of that character. I'm going to right now, without really giving away too terribly much, I will just say this. This version of Mr. Freeze does not walk around in a big clunky suit, and he doesn't walk around with a big ass freeze ray, much to my chagrin, because that's one of the hallmarks of Mr. Freeze that I really love. This is no less an impactful version of Mr. Freeze. I actually like what Nick Dragotta and Scott Snyder were able to come up with for this, because it's quite wild. It's actually, of all of the characters so far that I've seen, I guess, reimagined, Mr. Freeze might be the one I think is the most messed up. When I say mess, I mean like it's cool, but I mean, he is just oh my God, you're oh my God, this is freaky. I will also say this book actually plays on one of the few fears I actually do have, and I don't want to talk about it, because if I talk about it, it becomes real, and then I'm gonna throw up right here on camera, so we're not gonna do that. I guess technically it's not even really a fear, it's just something that makes me nauseous. I'll just leave it at that. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about. Batman is still reeling from his fight with Black Mask, and you can kind of see it in this issue. But I guess the good news is that Bruce doesn't have to be Batman in this issue. I mean, not to say that he doesn't do it, but I mean, Batman is not required here. Bruce Wayne, or rather Bruce Wayne with a fake ID, is what's really needed here. I think that's what actually makes the encounter with Mr. Freeze so terrifying. To get to what I was kind of alluding to earlier, there is something that happens in this issue where they're talking about Matches Malone, everybody is reconnecting, but you notice that this issue, in the scenes where they're talking about Matches Malone, everything is coded in heavy inks, lots of heavy shadows. You don't really see any of the characters. You see their outline, maybe their teeth, maybe a lining in their jacket or something, or maybe their hair, whatever, but none of the characters' faces. You really don't see, when they're in the scene talking about Matches Malone, you never see their faces, and there's a reason why. And when you get to the end of the issue, you'll know the reason why. And I kind of almost wish they would have gone ahead and done the reveal, but the way that it's done by the time you get to the end, you're oh my God, that's why they're not showing anyone's faces. Really, more specifically, Bruce's face. God, it's so good. It's so good. I love it. I think yeah, this issue was fantastic. That out of the way, we can actually talk about the pull box report. I don't really have a whole heap of a lot of new stuff to add to the pull box report this week. I'm actually gonna add a couple of things, and that's really it. Now that the word is out in the wind about what's been going on with the recent issues of Wonder Woman by Tom King, we now know that Wonder Woman is slated to get clapped at some point, and we're actually getting a mini series coming up here very soon. I believe this is going to be releasing in June, and it's going to be a mini series about Wonder Woman's daughter, Trinity. The book will actually be titled Trinity, Daughter of Wonder Woman. Not really sure how long this is going to run, but Tom King is going to be writing the series, so there will be some consistency there. And Belen Ortega is also going to be providing art for this, so I'm really excited to see how this is going to play up. This might seem surprising to some, but it really shouldn't be, because yeah, I've talked about this book before, but there's a new Dr. Aphra series that is coming out called Dr. Aphra Chaos Agent. It's going to be an ongoing series, and it's going to be written by Cherish Chan. I believe it's also going to have Gabriel Guzman on art, and I'm really interested in this. I'm a huge fan of the character of Dr. Aphra. I actually think Dr. Aphra is one of the best new characters in Star Wars in a long time, and has also by proxy introduced some other really awesome characters. I would actually say that if you've never read any of the Dr. Aphra books, highly recommended. Highly recommended. Like, it's like the way I always pitch Dr. Aphra is that it's basically if you took Indiana Jones and Han Solo and put them in the same character. Dr. Aphra is technically a morally ambiguous character, but she does heavily lean a little bit more to the dark side of things. We're talking like in Star Wars, like she's not a Jedi or anything, but I'm just saying like her actions are very, like if you played like games like Mass Effect, you know, you could do like Paragon and Renegade. Let's just say Dr. Aphra does full Renegade runs, pretty much. Let's just say that. In this series, she's going to be teaming up with Luke Skywalker again, something she's done off and on in her series in the past, and they have a very interesting the friendship / not friendship. So I'm really interested to see how that's going to play out. But I believe this is going to be coming out in June as well. So these are just some things to kind of keep on your radar, and we'll see what goes from there. That was the best comics this week. I hope you all enjoyed. And yeah, let me know what were some of your favorite comics this week. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell if you haven't done so already. And also make sure you hit that like button too, because it really helps the channel out tremendously in ways that I cannot quantify, but just know that it really helps the channel out. Like if I can put it in a finer point, typically if one of my videos gets at least 1,000 likes, that video does stupid well. Like stupid well. We're talking like 10, 20 plus thousand views by that point. So yeah, if everyone who watches this video hits that like button, it really helps me out tremendously. So please, anyway, until next time, keep it plus ultra out there in these streets, and I'll see you next time for the best comics this week.